If you're familiar with watercolour, you'll know all about the ugly stage. It's so off-putting when we think that our painting looks wrong. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to push past that stage to create this vibrant autumn leaf. Okay, as you can see, I've already done my outline here and I'll talk to you about that a little later, but let's talk about materials first of all. This incredible paper is from Etcher. It's 50% cotton and it's gummed, it's a block, and you'll need to remove the black sheet to start with. These are the paints that I'm going to be using today. These are from Magello and they come in tubes which I've squeezed out like this. Now I match my colours by making out a colour chart like this, and I explained to you in the video above how I match my colours super easily, but today I've swatched them all out for you. The colours I'm using are Permanent Yellow Light, Permanent Yellow Deep, Quinacridone Crimson Lake, Bright Clear Violet Vermilion, Permanent Red and Greenish Yellow. Now if you don't have these colours, don't worry, they will invariably be the same kind of colours in your own kit, and if you do have difficulty matching them, let me know in the comments and I'll help you out. I'm using a selection of brushes today from Rosemary & Co. This is a spotter which has shorter bristles along with my pointed round and my really good eradicator brush here. The little palette that I'm using is from Etcher Lab from Jackson's and super easy to clean because it's ceramic. Now this video is all about getting past that ugly stage with watercolour that we're all so familiar with. So this is how we're going to do it. First of all, the materials that we use are really important, but it's just trusting the method. This is a number 6 spotter. Now spotter brushes are something I've talked about a lot in the past. They have a stubbier bristle, which means that makes the watercolour application a lot easier, particularly if you're new to watercolour painting. We're working wet and wet to begin with, and I've mixed Permanent Yellow Light and Permanent Yellow Deep along with the Permanent Red here, and we're going to be applying this onto the wet paper. I've applied the water where I want to drop the paint, and you can see the colours that I'm dropping in here using my number 6 spotter. These yellowy tones are the colours that we see that are lying underneath the reddish tones and purplish tones that we see on the leaf. It's important that we get these in first so that we can build up our colours as we work through the tutorial. So we are just pushing this pigment into the pencil line using my number 6 spotter, and this initial wash is just to guide us as to where we're going to be applying the washes later on. These brushes are incredible for controlling your watercolour paint. All the materials I'm going to be using today I will link in the description box underneath this video if you want to check them out for yourself. Notice how I'm using the tip of the brush here to push that pigment into the pencil line. Now the pencil line is really important if you're going to be drawing this freehand, or even if you want to trace it down, which is absolutely fine, and we do provide you with a free traceable drawing and a reference photograph to work from, and I'll tell you later on in this video a couple of ways which you can access that. So just using that brush just to push that pigment into that pencil line so that it's nice and neat, so we've got a good solid base to work from. Just dropping in the lighter yellow and the darker yellow and letting that settle into the paper. This paper is 50% cotton and is absolutely incredible for this kind of painting. It's not super expensive and it's really great for blending. Now that the first wash is dry, I'm using my number 2 size Snowdrop round. These are all synthetic brushes. The synthetic round that I'm using here has a really fine point, so it's great for working in smaller areas as I'm doing here. I'm working wet on dry, which simply means that I'm applying the paint straight onto the paper. I've mixed Quinacridone Crimson Lake and Bright Clear Violet in a kind of watery consistency, and you can see I've put the pinky tone on the bottom and the purpley tone on the top. I have a little puddle of water in my palette here that I'm using to clean my brush, pat it on the kitchen paper and just using that damp brush to push that pigment into that paint. It's really important that each layer is completely dry before you apply the next, otherwise your paint could go muddy, so it's really important to be a little bit patient and make sure that your paint is dry. I'm applying these colours on the base of this little fold here, and I'm using the reference photograph just as a guide. We're not going to be going exactly to the photograph, it's just using it as a little guide here. So I'm applying this watered down purple tone here to the pencil line that I've painted in. Now if you look carefully at the photograph, you'll see that there are many switches in colour and tone on this leaf, and it's really important that we get these in. So first of all, just apply these colours on top of one another, and you can still see that yellow tone underneath by applying this in a really watered down version of the colour. It's really important that your mixes at this point are watery because it allows us to build up our colours as we work through the tutorial without the colours going muddy. If you're new to watercolour painting, you've probably experienced what's called a muddy or overworked painting, which simply means that your paint begins to lift off the paper. Now, watercolour is a very, very versatile medium, and I know this can put people off if you're new to painting, but it's all about getting your layers in really, really lightly to begin with. Now that everything's dry on the stem here, I've just applied another little layer. So as you can see, everything's now super dry. Vermilion and permanent red, and I've mixed them in my little palette here to a slightly thicker consistency. Using my number 2 pointed round, I'm applying water where I want to drop that red tone and the vermilion tone, and you can see here it just naturally blurs into the area that's wet. So I'm just using the tip of my number 2 pointed round just to apply this colour to the area that I've dropped the water. This time, of course, I haven't taken the water all over the leaf. I've just applied the water where I want that colour to go. Wherever you're going to paint your water and then drop your paint, that's where your colour will go into that area. And then using my brush, cleaning it in that little puddle and just blending it through once it's damp. If you are wondering why I've got a little puddle of water and I'm not cleaning my brush in my jar, it's simply because if you clean your brush in the water jar, the water will run down that metal part of the brush and land on your painting and make your paint bloom, which is what we don't want. So a little tip, have a little puddle of water in your palette and you can clean it that way. So at the moment, all we're doing is we're mapping out where we want the colours to go, just very gently and roughly putting that colour in place. You've noticed that I left a little gap and I'm just dropping in the darker pigment as I work through. I'm doing this again on the other areas of the leaf. You can see where I've applied that water and just dropping in that pigment. This is vermilion. You could add any colour that you want to that's ready, that's a reddish tone. You could use cadmium red, you could use yellow, oranges, and I've added a tiny bit of the permanent yellow deep there, and I'm just dropping in some vermilion. So you can see that the line of the colour is a little bit jagged, where we want it to look as kind of natural as we can. And I've just added that tiny bit of yellow to that mix to give it a little bit of variation in colour. We don't want this to look flat. So you can still see that lovely yellow tone underneath. And I'm using the tip of my number 2 brush just to push that pigment up to the pencil line. At this stage, the paint will still be watery, and it means that it's easy to move around with the tip of that brush. Same on the other side. You can see this time I'm leaving little gaps where I'm applying the water, and these will sort of eventually become our little veins that you can see in the pattern of the leaf. So we're just putting that water where we want to drop the colour as before, and just moving it into place with that brush and then just dropping in the pigments. All of these colours will need to be built on as we work through the tutorial, but at this point it's all about getting the colours in place, so we know where to build up our colours as we work through. So just continuing the process and pushing that pigment up to the pencil line. So at the start of this video, I mentioned that we have a free reference photograph and an outline for you to use so that you can join in with our tutorials. And there are a couple of ways that you can access these. And one of them is to become one of our watercolor wonders. So let's just take a look. We have a couple of ways that you can access our free reference photos and line drawings. We have our very own private Facebook group, and as a member, you will have access to all of them here. But in case you're not a Facebook fan, there's another way that you can access them, which I'll tell you about in a moment, but do consider joining us. We are a wonderful, friendly group, and you can post your finished paintings as well as your work in progress and have some feedback from me and our other incredible members. You can see here some of the completed works in our student gallery, and having positive feedback is such an amazing confidence booster and a great way to learn. So if this is something that interests you, I've put a link in the description box underneath this video. But if Facebook really isn't for you, then don't worry, because I will put the reference photo and the line drawing right at the end of this video so that you can pause, screenshot, and you can print it out that way. We want art to be accessible to everyone, so join in and have fun. All of our YouTube tutorials are full length, so join us, join in, and become one of our watercolor wonders. Okay, so as I said, if you don't like Facebook and it's not for everyone, you can still join in by staying to the end of this video, and I will put the line drawing and outline there. You can pause the video and print it out that way if you want to. You can trace it down that way. So continuing the process by dropping in these colours wet on wet where I've applied that paint. So because the paper is wet and because this 50% cotton paper allows the paper to stay sort of a little bit wetter for longer, you have that opportunity to drop in that colour, and you can see how they're merging into each other here. It looks really, really beautiful, and you can just drop in different colours if you want to. We've got that purpley tone there, we've got the yellows and the oranges where I've mixed a tiny bit of that permanent yellow and just dropping it in like this. You can see how varied these colours look. We're still going through this kind of ugly stage where our paint is maybe looking a little untidy and maybe not looking right, but that's fine. It's all part of the process, and you just need to push past that. When I started painting many years ago, I used to ditch my paintings at this stage, thinking that I made a mistake or I'd done it wrong, and I wasn't sure that it was meant to look a particular way. But it's really important that you push past that ugly stage to get to your end result. On the other side, I'm just applying water, again wet on wet, this time adding a mix of permanent yellow deep along with vermilion, or you could even add red, and varying those colours as I drop them in. Very, very simply, same process as before, and just using the tip of my brush to apply that colour like this. So if the ugly stage is something that you've struggled with your watercolour paintings and you haven't pushed past it and thinking that you've made a mistake, do let me know in the comments whether you've ditched your paintings at a particular point or whether you've pushed past that ugly stage and continued and the results that you've got. I'd really be interested to know whether you push past knowing that it's part of the process or whether you're thinking, oh, this may be a bit of a mistake and we'll ditch the painting. Let me know in the comments below. Okay, so just carrying on like this. You can see I've left a tiny gap in the middle here and just working through. This will eventually become the middle vein, and once again dropping in wet in wet. If you are new to our channel, we release new content every Tuesday. They are always going to be full-length painting tutorials. So if this is something that interests you, you may want to consider hitting that subscribe button along with that little bell notification so that you'll be notified every time we upload new content. And if you are enjoying this content, could I ask you to hit that like button? It's a way of letting YouTube know that you're enjoying my content. So just smash that like button just to let me know that you're enjoying what I do, and I really appreciate it. So just working through, this time I'm working wet on dry. It's entirely up to you if you want to work wet on wet or wet on dry for the smaller areas as I'm doing here, and it's good practice. So you can see again, once again, I'm just dropping in that pigment, and because we've got that lovely yellow tone underneath, you can see now that that yellow colour is forming part of the veins. So we're negatively painting around that colour to create a shape. So this is negative painting, and you can see here, once again, it's looking a little bit disjointed, but it's all part of the process, so don't worry. So dropping in that red tone, you can see my puddle of water in the middle has become a little bit messy, but we can change all the colours in a moment and clean down that palette. So just get these colours in place. Pretty much everywhere on this leaf now is looking covered with our first or second glazes, and we can start to think about adding the colours as we work through. I'm using my eradicator brush here, damp, just to lift out some of the veins on the other side because I didn't negatively paint them, so I'm lifting them out. Using my number 6 spotter, and once everything's completely dry, I'm just glazing over everything with a plain water wash. This will unify all your colours without moving them around, and it just means that you kind of merge your colours together and get rid of those hard edges. But it's really important at this stage that your washes are all completely dry before you do this, otherwise you're just going to lose the work that you've done. But if it's completely dry and using a really light touch, and I'm using my number 6 spotter to go around everything like this and gently merging those colours together using this light touch. Once this is done, it unifies everything, but it's super important that you let everything dry before you go on to the next stage, otherwise everything will just merge together. So light wash with water and let it dry. You can see the light touch that I'm using here. and just pulling that paint into the pigment. You can see we have lost a little bit of detail, but it's completely dry now, and we can start to think about building up our colours. Same colours as before, we're going to be using the Permanent Yellow Deep along with the other colours that I'm pointing to here. So we're starting off with the Quinacridone Crimson Lake. You can see these Mission Gold paints come in tubes, as I said at the start of this video, and I've squeezed them into this palette, and that's where they will stay. I'm not going to clean the palette down. These are going to be my kit of paints. So I'm going down to a number 4 size spotter here, and you can see the colours that I'm picking up here on my palette. Now that we have our base colour to work with, we can start to apply the darker colours around that initial wash. Cleaning my brush in the middle, patting it dry on the kitchen paper, and then you can move that paint wherever you want it to go. Now, all of our tutorials here on YouTube are full length so that everyone can join in. But if you want to improve your botanical painting, just to let you know that we do have a Patreon where we have brand new full length painting tutorials every month. So in case this is of interest to you, let's just take a look. If you love botanical painting and want to know more, then you may want to join our Patreon. We have different membership levels so that you can take your botanical painting to the next level. With our Clematis level, you will have a full-length, in-depth tutorial every month, and if you'd like to make even more progress, then check out our Rose level, where we now have a mentorship offering feedback to help you grow. You won't find any of our Patreon tutorials here on YouTube, and you can cancel your membership at any time. So if you want to take your botanical painting to the next level, then take a look. I'll put the link in the description underneath this video. All the tutorials that you see on Patreon are exclusive to Patreon, and all our tutorials here on YouTube are full length, so they're for everybody to use. But if you did want to level up and take your painting to the next level, then that might be something that interests you, and of course it's a way that you can support my channel. So here you can see me dropping in the bright clear violet and just dropping that in along with all the other colours that you can see here. I'm adding another wash of the yellow colour because I felt that we needed to brighten that up a bit. And I think we can safely say at this point it is kind of looking a little bit like that ugly stage. It's looking a little bit messy, but again, trust the process and work through. If you are struggling with colour matching and you'd like to join in with this tutorial, let me know in the comments if you are struggling to match the colours to the colours that you have within your own set, and I will do my best to help you so that you can join in and have fun with this tutorial. I'm now sort of painting in this yellow colour. Using the tip of my number 2 pointed round, I'm now going over that first wash, but this time I'm going to negatively paint in the vein in the middle, adding some of the purple tone to the bottom, and then you can see me picking up the pink and the red there, this time working around that little vein, just leaving a tiny little gap, once again negatively painting it. So you need a steady hand and a really good pointed brush to do this. And these pointed rounds from Rosemary & Co are absolutely amazing. I love Rosemary's brushes. I've been using her brushes ever since I started painting, and I highly recommend them. They're an amazing company. This isn't sponsored at all. These are just brushes that I use and I absolutely love them. So if you're looking for some new watercolor brushes, then do check them out, and I will link the brushes that I'm using today in the description box underneath this video, because especially the spotter brushes, if you're new to painting, I know that watercolor can be known to be a tricky medium to handle, but the spotters are very good if you're starting out, and the rounds that I'm using today are also very good because of their fine points, and I have to say their prices are absolutely incredible. I always use, these days I'm using synthetic brushes because I prefer them, and they start price-wise in the UK from about £3, so we're not talking about masses of money here. You don't need to be spending a lot of money on your brushes. Your investment should be really on your paper. If you're on a tighter budget, I would say get the best paper that you can. But the brushes here that I'm using are incredible, and they start at about £3, so we're not talking huge bucks. Okay, so carry on working through. You can see that I've applied this red tone on top of the existing colour, so we can still see that yellow colour coming through underneath. And now we're building on it this way with that damp brush, once again blending these colours together. I do have a particular way of applying my watercolour, and I do talk about it in more detail on this video on the top of your screen. So if you want to check that out later, then click on that, and you can take a closer look on how I apply my colour. Adding this purple tone, you can see how we can still see those lovely colours shining through. Now, if we had gone in too quickly with the thicker tones, then we wouldn't be able to see these colours. So this is one of the reasons why it's really, really important to have your colours really, really watery to begin with. This allows us to build up the colours and get past the ugly stage so that we can create really, really cool looking paintings. I love the colours of this leaf. I immediately was drawn to it when I took the photograph, and I felt this is something that we needed to paint absolutely on this YouTube channel, and I knew you guys would love it. So let's carry on working with this number 2 brush and leaving little gaps here and there. Like I said, we're not going exactly to the photograph, we're just kind of using it as a guide. Look at how those colours are coming through one by one. You can see them almost merging together, creating this beautiful kind of you can see those colours kind of just coming through. I love this look. So just using the brush and this kind of wiggly motion, you can see the colours that I'm picking up on my palette here. I'm just varying the colours. I think the important thing here is to make sure that your colours are not flat. Dropping in that purple mix. So this is a mixture of the purple with a tiny bit of red. Once again, leaving that tiny little gap, and taking the paint into the pencil line. When you trace down your drawing, make sure that your pencil line is as light as possible. You only want your pencil outline to be an outline. You don't really want to be seeing the pencil line as such. It's just to guide you as to where you're going to be putting that paint. So I never erase my pencil lines after. A few of you have asked me whether I do, and I don't. I don't think it's necessary, assuming of course that your pencil lines are nice and light. So once again, everything's completely dry. I've cleaned down my palette, and this time I'm adding greenish yellow and the permanent yellow deep with vermilion, and I'm mixing that greenish yellow into that to create this kind of murky browny greeny colour. And we're back to quinacridone crimson lake and the bright clear violet, which I've mixed together there as well. So everything has to be dry, and I'm using my number 2 brush, this time once again negatively painting around those shapes. So you can see how that's really lifted up that colour. And I'm also taking the mixture of the quinacridone, crimson lake and purple, and I'm using it to outline the stalk like this. Just patting that colour through, picking up some of that green mix and starting off down that stem with the purple mix and then taking it to the green like this. Coming down like that and adding a little bit of the quinacridone mix. So we started off with the purple mix coming down that vein, added the green mix, and then back to the purple mix with the quinacridone. And this just varies that colour as before. You could just add the greenish mix if you wanted to, but I've got this colour mixed up, so I'm going to be putting that purple mix here and then just varying it with the green mix as I work down. Just carrying on the process, mixing up the purple with the pink tone, and just working down that vein that we left out earlier on. So at this point you can see that everything's starting to come together. The beauty of watercolour is it's so buildable, but the trick is to make sure that your layers are weak enough to begin with. So when we put those initial washes in, it just means that you're just putting in place the colours that you know that you're going to be building on as you work through. It also gives you the opportunity to really kind of figure out which colours are going where. I'm using the purple mix and my number 2 brush to outline the colours that I've just applied to give them a bit more definition. And just painting in some veins here at this point. Just really, really lightly using that quinacridone and purple mix. And once again outlining that section there, and you can see how that's really neatened up that area. Adding some of the purple tone here and there just to give a little bit of definition, just to give a little bit of a pattern on that section there and on the top bit here. And I'll blend these in with my damp brush. When you do the blending, make sure that your brush is damp and not wet, because if it's wet, of course, it's going to push your colour out. So just pat it on the kitchen paper once you've cleaned your brush. So once again, adding tiny little bits of dark colours here and there, and just wiggling that brush and pushing that pattern in sort of randomly, just to give it a bit more interest and add a bit of texture and add a bit more colours and variation as I work through. Just dropping in that ready tone and outlining a little bit more of that vein. So I'm just sort of putting some of the darker tones here and there. I don't want to lose the washes that I have underneath, but because these colours are so strong, I have to be a little bit careful with them. These Magello paints, I've only just recently bought them and I'm just getting to know them a little bit. Really love them. They're artist quality and they are absolutely beautiful. But they come in tubes and I'm really a pan girl, so I'm struggling a little bit with the fact that I'm having to squeeze them into the palette and let them dry. I'm so used to using pans. I wonder whether you prefer using pans or tubes. Let me know in the comments below, but I'm definitely a pan girl. Okay, so just carrying on working around those little lines that are lifted out and dropping in the darker colour here. So this is just the purple mix. So we have purple with the quinacridone Crimson Lake. And working around this area here, this is the vermilion. Just darkening up one or two of the colours here. So you can see this is really coming together now. Adding a bit more purple and to the red mix there. So I'm now going over the lines that I painted in earlier on because I feel I need to brighten them up a bit and darken them and strengthen them. So you can see I'm using my number 2 brush here just to do that. Now we have got quite a way to go yet on this painting tutorial, but the process is exactly the same. So I'm going to stop talking, let you listen to some music. Make sure that you stay right until the end so that you can see the finished painting, and of course do a screen save of the outline and the reference photograph so that you can paint along with me. And if you like painting leaves, we've also done another video where we show you how to paint the really beautiful autumn leaf, and I will put that right at the end of this video so that you can click through and I'll see you there. Remember to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to stop talking and let you watch the rest of this video in peace, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching. Stay until the end to get that photo.